Did you really think you could hide this from me, Evelyn? That's what Diana whispered into my ear, right before the room went completely silent and 50 people turned to stare at us. And all I could think was, why would she say something like that here? Now? The smell of chocolate frosting and cheap helium balloons floated around me as I stood frozen in the middle of my nephew's first birthday party. Children were laughing, adults were clapping, and yet my skin felt cold, like someone had opened a window behind my spine. I turned slowly to look at her, my sister, Diana, in her bright yellow dress, her lips curled into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. She always smiled like that when she wanted to hurt me, without anyone noticing. "Evelyn, are you okay?" someone asked. But I couldn't answer. Not yet. Not until I understood why Diana had chosen this moment, the first time I'd stepped out of the house after Michael's funeral, to say something that sounded like a threat. I should start from the beginning, I guess. If you're still here, welcome to Voice of Jenna, a place where stories aren't just told, they're felt. Here, we dive into real emotions, family drama, quiet heartbreaks, unexpected twists, and the moments that change us. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you what happened next. My name is Evelyn Hart, 72 years old. A woman who still brushes her hair into a soft silver bun every morning, even when my heart isn't in it. A woman who still cooks for two, even though Michael hasn't sat at our kitchen table in 3 months. I come from a quiet town where the streets are old, the neighbors know too much, and the winters hit your bones before your coat even zips. I didn't want to be at this party. My chest felt heavy the moment I woke up, like a hand was pressing down on me. But I forced myself to come because it was Mason's first birthday. My sister's son. My nephew. The baby I had held on the day he was born. The baby I used to kiss on the forehead before Diana snatched him back with that same cold smile. Family duty. That's what I kept telling myself. You have to show up, Evelyn. Be present. Try to live again. But standing there, with Diana's whisper burning in my ear, I regretted coming. She placed a hand on my shoulder, gently, almost lovingly, but her fingers tightened just a bit too much. "Smile," she murmured. "We don't want anyone to get confused." Confused about what? I didn't ask. I couldn't trust my voice to come out steady. Diana always knew how to keep me off balance. She had done it since we were children. If I got a new dress, she would accidentally spill juice on it. If I came home with an award from school, she'd cry until my father handed her the plaque instead. If I fell in love, she flirted with the man just to test whether he liked me more. And Michael, she tested him too. A lot more than I wanted to admit. "Let's take pictures," someone shouted, snapping me back into the present. A group of women gathered around Mason, and the air filled with the sound of camera shutters and fake laughter. I tried to join them, tried to let my face relax, but inside my thoughts were stumbling over themselves. Why did Diana look almost victorious? Why did her jaw tighten every time someone mentioned Michael's funeral last week? And why did she keep glancing at me like she was waiting for me to crumble? I took a step back, needing space to think, but Diana followed, always 2 steps behind. Close enough to make sure I couldn't escape her mood. She leaned closer again, her perfume thick and floral. "I hope you're ready," she whispered. "This is going to change everything." "What are you talking about?" I finally managed, my voice low. She didn't answer. Instead, she straightened and called loudly, "Everyone, can I have your attention, please?" My stomach dropped. No. Not here. Not in front of family, friends, neighbors, people who brought me casseroles when Michael died, people who still whispered condolences when I passed them at the market. But Diana thrived on moments like these. Dozens of eyes turned toward her as she picked up Mason and held him like a trophy. "There's something important I need to share," she announced. "Something about my son and our family." A murmur rolled through the room. I felt heat crawl up my neck. My hands tightened around the gift bag I had brought. Simple wrapping, a small toy, nothing dramatic. But it suddenly felt like it weighed 10 pounds. "Diana," I said quietly, "maybe this isn't." She cut me off with a sharp look. Then she lifted her chin and said the words that would split my world in half. "Mason isn't just my son. He's Michael's son, too. The room erupted. Voices, gasps, confusion, but all I heard was the shattering inside my own chest. My legs felt weak. My breath thinned out like a thread. Michael? My Michael? Gone only 3 months. The man I spent 45 years with. The man who held my hand every morning. The man who was buried wearing the watch I gave him on our first anniversary. No, I whispered. That's impossible. Diana continued, louder now, feeding off the crowd's shock. And as Michael's son's mother, I believe Mason deserves his rightful inheritance, including half of Evelyn's house. Half of my house. The home Michael and I built together. The only place that still smelled like him. The place where his sweater still lay across the couch because I couldn't bear to fold it. My vision blurred. Not from tears. Those came later. It blurred from anger. And humiliation. And something else, confusion. Because deep inside, past the noise and chaos, there was one strange truth humming quietly. Michael would never have hidden something like that from me. He wasn't that man. He wasn't capable of that kind of betrayal. Unless there was something he tried to protect me from. I didn't know it yet, but Diana's announcement wasn't the beginning of my humiliation. It was the beginning of uncovering a secret Michael left behind. A secret that would change everything I thought I knew about him. And about my sister. I stood there, gripping the gift bag, my heart pounding like it wanted to break free. And for the first time since Michael died, I felt something stronger than grief. I felt suspicion. And that was the moment the real story began. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing Daniel's words replaying in my head. People hide whole lives behind polite smiles. Those words shouldn't have unsettled me. And yet, they did. By morning, my living room still felt too quiet, like the air was holding its breath. The sunlight coming through the curtains painted long golden stripes on the carpet, but even the light felt tense. I sat on the edge of the couch, rubbing my forehead, trying to push away the uneasy feeling that had settled in my chest. It wasn't like me to overthink, but something about that woman, her voice, her confidence, the way she seemed to know exactly what she wanted, kept clawing at me. I tried to distract myself the way I always do, routine, order, movement. I made tea, the usual strong black with a slice of lemon. I washed the dishes still in the sink from last night. I straightened the cushions Daniel had left crooked. But the whole time, my mind kept drifting back to her, to the strange glint in her eyes, to Daniel's reaction, to the odd, stretched silence afterward that didn't sound like him at all. Around 10 a.m., I went outside to water the plants. The weather was soft, warm, almost gentle, like the world was trying to comfort me. Birds were chirping. The street was quiet except for a distant dog barking. Everything felt normal, and yet I didn't. I was trimming the lavender when our neighbor, Mrs. Turner, walked over from across the street. She's the kind of woman who always looks like she knows something before you tell her. Her white hair was tied in a perfect bun, her floral dress swaying as she walked. She held a plate of scones in one hand, like she always did when she sensed something brewing. "Oh, dear," she began, lowering her voice as if the flowers could overhear us. "I saw someone unfamiliar leaving your house last night. Is everything all right?" She said it lightly, but her eyes were sharp. I forced a smile. Just a visitor. A distant acquaintance. Mrs. Turner raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying it. Well, she looked like she had money. And money always brings trouble when the rest of us don't have enough to keep up. I laughed softly, but her words stung with a truth I didn't want to acknowledge. Daniel and I weren't poor, but we weren't wealthy either. Not like that woman seemed to be. "I'm sure everything is fine," I replied. But my voice wavered. Mrs. Turner's tone softened. "Just keep your eyes open, dear. People can come into your life for one reason while pretending it's another." She gave me the plate of scones and walked off, leaving me with more questions than comfort. That's when Daniel came outside. His hair was messy, like he hadn't slept either. His shirt wasn't buttoned properly, and his eyes had that tired, defeated look I had only seen once, years ago, when he lost his job and wasn't sure how he'd provide for us. He stood beside me, staring at the garden, hands shoved in his pockets like a guilty teenager. "I'm sorry," he murmured. I put the watering can down. "For what?" "For last night. I should have told you who she was." My heart instantly tightened. "Who is she, Daniel?" He hesitated. "Too long. She's someone from my past," he said quietly. "Someone I didn't expect to ever see again." He looked away, jaw clenched. "What does she want?" I asked. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know yet." And somehow, that was worse than any answer he could have given. I stepped closer, trying to catch his eye. "Daniel, just tell me the truth. Whatever it is, I can handle it." He opened his mouth to speak, but the sound of a phone buzzing in his pocket cut through the air. He pulled it out, glanced at the caller ID, and his face drained of color. "It's her," he whispered. Before I could react, before I could ask anything, he stepped away from me and answered. "Yes." His voice dropped, low and tight. A long pause. Then his shoulders stiffened. "This isn't the right time," he said sharply. Another pause. Then louder. "No, not today." He ended the call abruptly and shoved the phone into his pocket like it had burned him. "Daniel." "I need some air," he muttered, already walking toward the gate. I reached out, my fingers brushing his arm. "Please don't shut me out." He froze for a moment, back turned to me. I could see the strain in the way he held himself, the weight in his shoulders, the tension in his fists. I need to think," he said, his voice barely audible. Then he left. I stood there in the sunlight, holding a plate of warm scones I suddenly had no appetite for. The garden felt colder. The street felt quieter. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like Daniel was slipping away from me, inch by inch. As I went back inside, a strange feeling washed over me, like I wasn't alone, like someone had been watching the entire conversation. I turned my head sharply toward the window. Just for a second, only a heartbeat, I thought I saw a shadow move. But when I blinked, it was gone. I told myself it was nothing, just my mind playing tricks. But my pulse didn't believe me. My instincts didn't believe me. Something was shifting around me, slowly, silently, like a storm gathering before the first drop of rain touches the ground. I sat on the couch again, staring at the doorway where Daniel had stood just minutes ago. The phone rang. A long, sharp, unsettling ring. I picked it up slowly, dread flooding my stomach. A woman's voice, soft, confident, unmistakable, came through the line. "It's time you and I talked," she said calmly. "About Daniel." And then the line went dead. I didn't even realize I was shaking until the receiver slipped slightly in my hand. Who was this woman? Why did she know my home number? And most importantly, why did her voice sound like she already knew everything about me? Because there was something she wasn't saying, something I could feel more than understand. And I knew, deep in my bones, this was only the beginning. The house felt too still after she hung up. That woman's voice had slipped into my home like smoke under a door, soft, cold, and impossible to ignore. I stood there, staring at the silent phone, feeling the weight of her words settle on my chest. "It's time you and I talked about Daniel." No name, no explanation, just quiet certainty, like she had every right in the world to insert herself into my life. I sat down slowly, hands trembling despite my efforts to steady them. I didn't know this woman, not truly, but she spoke as if she knew me, as if she understood something about Daniel that I didn't. And that thought alone cut deeper than anything else. I kept replaying her voice in my head.
Calm.
Confident. Almost rehearsed. Who talks like that to a stranger? Who calls someone's home with that tone, as if they're delivering a verdict? The clock on the wall ticked. Soft, rhythmic, relentless. Somehow, it made the silence worse. I reached for my phone to call Daniel. It went straight to voicemail. My heart dropped. I tried again. Same thing. A thin thread of fear curled up my spine. Daniel never ignored my calls. He was the type who answered halfway through the first ring. Even during arguments. Even during work. He always said, "Your voice is the one thing I never want to miss." So why now? I stood up, grabbed my keys, and paced the living room. I could hear my own thoughts racing louder than my footsteps. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was letting insecurity answer questions before logic could even speak. But then I remembered the look on his face when he saw that call earlier. That drained expression, like the past had come to collect a debt. I headed to the front door, then stopped when a loud knock echoed through the house. Sharp, urgent, too firm to be friendly. My breath caught. For a moment, I didn't move. The knock came again, louder this time. Whoever it was, they weren't leaving. I opened the door just a crack. It wasn't Daniel. It was his brother, Mark. His expression was tight, his jaw clenched, eyes flicking around as if expecting someone else to step out behind me. Oh, I exhaled, relief and anxiety mixing in a confusing swirl. You scared me. Mark leaned closer. Where's Daniel? I was hoping you'd know. I stepped aside to let him in. He left after taking a call. He hasn't answered since. Mark entered, his boots thudding against the floor. He looked around the room like he was searching for something out of place. What's going on? I asked. He hesitated before answering. Never a good sign with him. Mark was blunt by nature. Hesitation meant trouble. I saw a woman outside your house last night, he said. Tall, expensive looking, dark hair. I didn't think much of it at first, but she was standing across the street just watching the place. My stomach turned. Why didn't you say something? Because I thought she might have been lost, he admitted. Then I saw her car again this morning. Same spot. A cold tingle crept over my skin. Where is she now? Mark shook his head. Gone. Just before I knocked, I wrapped my arms around myself without realizing it. She called here. She wants to talk to me. About Daniel. Mark's eyes darkened. Did she say her name? No. He muttered something under his breath, pacing a few steps as if trying to organize his thoughts. Listen, I need you to stay calm. But I think she's connected to something from Daniel's past. What past? I asked, my voice sharp. Because he never told me anything like this existed. Mark sighed, rubbing his forehead. Daniel didn't tell you, because he thought it was behind him. We all did. You're scaring me, I whispered. He stopped pacing and faced me fully. There's something you should know, he said quietly. Years ago, Daniel got involved with someone he shouldn't have. Someone wealthy, powerful, dangerous in her own way. She walked out of his life, but not before making it clear she wasn't the type to forgive being left. My pulse thudded in my ears. Are you telling me she's back? Mark didn't answer directly, but his silence did. I sank onto the couch, mind spinning. Why now? Why after all these years? I don't know, Mark said. But if she's calling your house, showing up outside, tracking Daniel, she wants something. And people like her don't show up without a reason. I swallowed hard. We need to find him. Mark nodded. I already tried. His phone's off. His car's gone. And he didn't show up to work. I stared at him. Work? He went to work? No. That's the point. Mark sat down across from me. He didn't show. Didn't call. Nothing. Something icy settled in my stomach. So he's missing, I whispered. Mark opened his mouth to reply, but the doorbell rang. Not a knock this time. A ring. Long, sharp, deliberate. Mark stood immediately. Stay here, he said, low and protective. But I followed him anyway, because fear makes you cling to anything that feels like clarity. He opened the door. There was no one outside. Just a small white envelope resting on the doormat. My breath hitched. Mark bent down and picked it up. There was no name on it. No address. Just a single red wax seal, pressed into a circle. He looked at me with unease. Do you recognize this? I shook my head. No. He cracked the seal and opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten note. Mark read it silently, his face draining of color. Oh, God. I grabbed the paper from his hand before he could stop me. There were only 4 words written in neat, elegant handwriting. Ask him the truth. My heart lurched. The truth? What truth? Before I could even process the message, Mark whispered, "She knows. Whatever this is, she knows." I looked down at the note again, my fingers trembling, because there was something else on the page. A faint fingerprint in the corner. A woman's fingerprint, in red. Not ink, not wax. Something darker. Something that made my stomach twist. Before I could speak, Mark pointed toward the window. I followed his gaze, and my breath caught in my throat. Across the street, half hidden behind a parked car, a woman stood watching us. Still. Silent. Unblinking. The same woman from last night. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second, and then she smiled. A slow, knowing smile that made my blood run cold. And just like that, she got into her car and drove away, leaving behind only dust and questions I wasn't sure I wanted the answers to. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, something inside me cracked open. Fear, anger, betrayal, it all tightened in my chest until I could barely breathe. For a long moment, Mark and I just stood there, staring at the empty street like the asphalt itself might whisper answers. "How long has this been going on?" I finally asked, my voice thin and unsteady. Mark didn't answer right away. He rubbed his palms together, a nervous habit I had seen him do only twice before, once at their father's funeral and once when Daniel almost died in a car accident years ago. It was a sign of panic he thought he hid well. He didn't. "I don't know," he said slowly. "But if she's showing up in person, this isn't new. She's been circling him for a while." A burning ache spread through my throat. "And he didn't tell me." "Because he thought she'd disappear again," Mark said. "He didn't want to drag you into something that nearly ruined him once." "But now I'm already in it," I whispered. Mark exhaled hard. "Yeah, looks like it." The envelope lay on the coffee table between us, mocking me with its perfect handwriting and that unnerving fingerprint. My eyes kept drifting back to the words. Ask him the truth. I hated how they made my heart race. I hated that they made me question him. Because the truth isn't something you fear when you trust someone. Unless there is something to fear. I sat on the edge of the couch and pressed my hands to my forehead. "We have to find him, Mark. He could be hurt. Or in trouble. Or." "That's what I'm trying to avoid," he interrupted, his tone firm. "Panicking won't help. We need to think." But thinking wasn't the problem. My thoughts were too loud. Too heavy. Too scattered. I stood suddenly, grabbing my bag. "I'm going to the police." Mark blocked me with one hand on my arm. "And tell them what? That a woman in designer heels smiled at you from across the street? That your husband didn't answer the phone today?" His tone softened. "They won't do anything. You know that." I turned away from him, fists clenched. "Then I'll find him myself." "Where will you start?" Mark asked quietly. "He could be anywhere." I froze. Because he was right. I didn't know where to begin. Then, almost instinctively, I reached for my phone and opened the tracking app. The one Daniel and I always had running in the background in case either one of us got lost or stuck or needed help. We'd never used it. It had always been a silent reassurance. The little circle representing him began to load, spinning slowly on the map. Then, a location popped up. My breath caught. Mark leaned over my shoulder. "Is that?" "Yes," I whispered, my heart hammering. Daniel's phone was pinging at Brookside Industrial Park, on the edge of town. A place with abandoned warehouses. Old factories. No lights after sunset. No reason for Daniel to ever be there. A chill crept up my spine. "We're going," I said, already heading toward the door. Mark cursed under his breath. "Fine. But I'm driving." We rushed out, and for the next 20 minutes the car was filled with a silence, so tense it felt like a third passenger. My mind spiraled through every possibility, none of them good. But beneath the fear, there was something else. Something ugly and unwelcome. Doubt. Was this woman telling the truth? Had Daniel hidden something from me? Had he lied? Mark glanced at me. "Don't go there," he said quietly, reading my expression. "Don't let her get into your head. She already has, I whispered. When we finally turned into the industrial park, the place looked like a forgotten world. Rows of empty buildings, cracked windows, rusting metal structures that moaned with the wind. The sky was already dimming, shadows stretching long across the concrete. I tried to swallow, but my mouth was too dry. Mark parked the car. "Stay close to me," he said. He reached under his seat and pulled out a flashlight. "If something feels off, we leave. No heroics." I nodded, though my legs were already trembling. We stepped out. Gravel crunched under our feet. The air smelled of rust and cold dust. I checked the tracking app again. "This way," I whispered, pointing toward a long gray warehouse with a sagging metal roof. Mark went first, sweeping the flashlight across the entrance. "Daniel," he called out. His voice echoed. "Nothing. Just wind through broken windows." We pushed inside. The warehouse swallowed us whole, dark, cavernous, empty except for old crates and metal shelves. Our footsteps echoed like a warning. My pulse climbed with every step. "His phone should be right here," I said. "Exactly here." Mark lifted the flashlight and aimed it ahead. Something glinted on the ground. I hurried toward it and froze. It was Daniel's phone. Face down. Abandoned. Screen cracked. Cold washed over me in a violent wave. "Mark," I whispered, my voice cracking. He wouldn't just leave his phone. Something happened. Before Mark could respond, the warehouse lights flickered, then snapped on all at once, buzzing overhead. I gasped and spun around. We weren't alone. Standing at the far end of the warehouse was the same woman, the one with the flawless posture, the tailored coat, the unsettling smile. She stepped forward slowly, heels tapping sharply against the concrete. Mark grabbed my arm and pulled me behind him, but she didn't stop. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew she controlled the entire room. When she was close enough for me to see her face clearly, she tilted her head slightly. "You're early," she said softly. Her voice. The same voice from the phone call. "I didn't expect you to find him so quickly," she added, her smile widening. My heart lurched painfully. "Where is Daniel?" She didn't answer. Instead, she glanced at the cracked phone on the floor, almost amused. Mark stepped forward. "I swear to God if you've..." She raised a hand to silence him. "Mark," she said, as if speaking to a disobedient child. "You always interrupt." His jaw clenched. "Say where he is. Now." She moved her gaze back to me, eyes sharp and disturbingly calm. "Ask him," she said. My hands clenched at my sides. "Ask him what?" Her lips curved into that same slow, unnerving smile. "The truth," she whispered. My breath hitched. The exact same words from the note. Then she turned gracefully, started walking toward the back exit, and paused only once, just before disappearing into the shadows. Without looking back, she said, "He's not the man you think he is." And then she was gone. The lights flickered again, then cut out completely, plunging the warehouse into darkness. Mark shouted my name as the building echoed with the sound of something slamming shut. Something heavy. Something final. The darkness swallowed everything. And for the first time since this began, I realized this wasn't just about a secret. It was about a past that was coming back to collect all its debts, even if it meant tearing my life apart to do it. The darkness was so sudden it felt like it punched the air out of my lungs. One moment the warehouse was humming under harsh fluorescent lights, and the next black, dense, suffocating. "Mark," I whispered, reaching blindly. "I'm here," he said somewhere to my left, but his voice was tight, too tight. "Stay still." Something just locked us in. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. I strained to listen, but the warehouse was too large, too empty. Even our breathing sounded too loud, echoing in every direction. I crouched down and fumbled for Daniel's phone. My fingers brushed the cracked screen, cold and gritty with dust. "What is happening?" I whispered to myself, though I knew there was no comforting answer. Mark's hand found my shoulder. "I hate to say it, but she wanted us here." "You think she trapped us?" I think she's been 3 steps ahead since she showed up on that street, he muttered. Which means she's probably still watching. That thought made the darkness feel sharper, more alive, like unseen eyes were studying us from every corner. I forced myself to inhale slowly. We need to find another exit. I turned on Daniel's phone, hoping the flashlight function still worked. The screen flickered, struggling, then weak light spilled out, trembling like a candle flame. It wasn't much, but it was something. Let's move, Mark said. We stepped deeper into the warehouse, the phone's faint beam dancing across rusted metal shelves and abandoned boxes. A distant dripping echoed from somewhere above, each drop sending a shiver down my spine. My thoughts spiraled. Why was Daniel here? Why had he left his phone? Why had she said, ask him the truth? What truth? I whispered, not realizing I'd spoken aloud. Mark slowed. Whatever it is, he should have told you. A dull ache spread through my chest. Mark, there is something you're not saying. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I felt fear coil in my stomach. Mark. My voice tightened. Do you know something? The phone light caught his face, jaw clenched, eyes avoiding mine. I know he's not perfect, all right? But he's not the kind of man who walks away from you. That's not an answer. He exhaled sharply. It's the only one I have. I didn't believe him. Not entirely. But this wasn't the time to push. We kept walking until the faint light landed on a metal staircase, half broken, leading up to a shadowy catwalk. Maybe there's a door up there, I said, though even I didn't sound convinced. Mark gripped the railing and started up first. Stay close. The metal groaned beneath our feet. Each step screamed into the emptiness, making the warehouse feel even more hollow. At the top of the stairs, we found a long corridor raised above the floor, lined with dusty windows that hadn't seen daylight in decades. The air was colder here, sharper. I wrapped my arms around myself. Then I heard it. A faint buzzing. Mark froze. Please tell me that's your phone. It's not. I held up Daniel's phone. This thing barely turns on. The buzzing grew louder, steady, rhythmic. And then we saw it. At the end of the corridor, hanging by a single wire from the ceiling, was an old industrial lamp. Flickering. Swinging gently, as if someone had just brushed past it. I don't like this, I murmured. We're almost to the end. Keep going, Mark said. We approached cautiously. The light swung wider, and as it did, it illuminated something on the wall. A message, written in thick, dark strokes. At first I thought it was paint, but the closer the lamp swung, the more my stomach twisted. It wasn't paint. It was something darker, thicker, dripping slowly down the cracked plaster. 3 words. He lied first. My throat closed. Oh God. Mark swallowed hard. Don't look at it. We need to move. But I couldn't look away. He lied first. He lied first. The words throbbed in my mind like a heartbeat. What is she trying to say? I whispered, emotion cracking beneath the fear. What did Daniel lie about? Suddenly, a sound thundered through the warehouse, metal slamming, echoing up the corridor. Then footsteps. Fast. Purposeful. Not running, stalking. Mark grabbed my wrist. We need to go now. We sprinted down the catwalk, the phone's weak beam shaking wildly. The footsteps grew faster, louder, closer. Where's the exit? I gasped. End of the walkway there. Mark pointed to a heavy door rusted nearly shut. He shoved it with his shoulder. It barely budged. Push with me, he yelled. I pressed my palms to the freezing metal and pushed with everything I had. Something cracked in my wrist, but I ignored the pain. The footsteps were almost at the top of the stairs now. The door groaned, shifted, but wouldn't open. Again, Mark shouted. We pushed. Harder. My lungs screamed. The footsteps reached the catwalk. And then they stopped. Silence fell. A silence, so complete it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Mark, I whispered, tears burning. Someone is watching us.
He didn't respond.
His entire body had gone rigid. Slowly, terrifyingly, he turned his head and looked over his shoulder. His face went pale. Don't turn around, he whispered. The cold in his voice froze my blood. Mark, what do you see? He swallowed loudly. Someone standing at the end of the catwalk. I felt my knees weaken. Who? I don't know. I can't see her face. But she's not moving. My breath hitched. Is it her? I think so. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. She's just standing there, Mark whispered. Like she's waiting. A faint click echoed. A heel on metal. And then another. She began walking toward us. Slow. Measured. Unhurried. My pulse skyrocketed. Mark, open the door, please. We pushed again, one final desperate shove, and the door snapped open with a scream of tortured metal. Light flooded in. Cold, fresh air hit my face like a blessing. Go! Mark yelled. We stumbled out, tumbling onto the gravel outside. The door slammed shut behind us with a thunderous clang. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Neither of us breathed. Then Mark whispered, "She wasn't trying to trap us." I turned to him, trembling. What do you mean? He pointed back at the warehouse door. She was trying to warn us. I stared at him, stunned. Warn us about what? Mark hesitated. Then in a low, shaken voice, he said, Daniel. A chill ran through my entire body. What about Daniel? Mark looked at me with an expression I had never seen on him before, fear mixed with heartbreaking pity. The message on the wall, he whispered. I think she meant it literally. He swallowed. Daniel lied first. And whatever he lied about, it's the reason all of this is happening. My blood turned to ice. Because deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I already knew it was true. I didn't expect the house to feel colder the next morning, but it did, like something inside these walls had quietly shifted overnight. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the silence after a storm that I knew wasn't finished. I woke up earlier than usual, long before the sun softened the sky. Sleep had been broken, scattered between unfinished thoughts and the echo of my name in Aisha's trembling voice. I kept hearing her ask, "What if he thinks I'm doing this for attention?" That question hadn't left me. It had burrowed itself into my chest, gnawing slowly, reminding me that whenever my daughter suffered, a piece of me did too. I made tea, but barely tasted it. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Not from fear, no. From something else. Something heavier. Something like the feeling you get when you know you're standing on the edge of a decision that can change everything. By the time I heard the quiet knock on my door, the steam from my cup had already cooled. Come in, I said softly. Aisha stepped inside. Her hair was tied loosely. She still looked shaken, but her eyes carried that spark of resilience she inherited from me. Still fragile, still too aware of the world's sharpness, but strong enough to step forward anyway. Amy, can I sit? Always, I said, patting the bed. She sat beside me, pulling her knees close, like she used to as a little girl when she had something difficult to say, but didn't know how to shape the words. What happened last night? She whispered. I keep replaying it. I keep thinking, did we overreact? Did I? Her self-blame struck me like a slap. No, I said firmly, but gently. You reacted exactly as anyone would. You felt uncomfortable. That's enough. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked at the floor, twisting the corner of her shawl between her fingers. Amy, I don't want anyone thinking I'm trying to ruin things. Especially Abba. At the mention of him, my husband, her father, something inside me twisted. Because I hadn't told her yet. I hadn't told her what he said after she went to her room. The look in his eyes. The uncertainty lingering in his voice. I wasn't ready to. Not yet. Instead, I said, the only person you owe honesty to is yourself. She exhaled shakily. But before either of us could say another word, the sound of the front door opening broke the stillness. A voice followed. A familiar voice. A voice that carried confidence and something else. Something unsettling. Auntie? Can I come in for a moment? Rena. She was here. At 8 a.m. My heart sank, not in fear, but in that instinctive way a mother's heart moves when she feels danger approaching her children. Aisha went pale. I don't want to see her, she murmured quickly. You don't have to, I said. Stay here. I'll handle it. And I meant every word of that. I stood, smoothed my clothes, and walked toward the living room with the quiet, deliberate steps of someone who knew a confrontation was coming. There she stood, Rena, perfectly composed, dressed immaculately as always, hair pinned neatly, handbag on her shoulder like she was here for a polite breakfast visit. But her eyes, they gave her away. Cold. Studying. Calculating. Good morning, she said, smiling. I hope I didn't come at a bad time. It's early, I replied evenly. What do you need? Oh. She placed a hand on her chest dramatically. I just wanted to clear up last night's misunderstanding. I think things escalated a bit more than they needed to. A misunderstanding? That word alone was enough to make my vision blur with controlled anger. Still, I kept my voice steady. Calm. Firm. What exactly are you referring to? Well, she sighed, giving a small rehearsed laugh. Teenagers can be sensitive. Aisha took my comments very personally. I was only trying to help her. But she seemed emotional. There it was. The subtle accusation underneath the polite surface. The insinuation that my daughter wasn't stable. That she was exaggerating. That her behavior, not Rena's, was the problem. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. She wasn't emotional. She was uncomfortable. There's a difference. Rena's smile tightened just barely. I think she misunderstood my intentions. No, I said. She understood them clearly. For a moment, the mask slipped from her face. Her jaw tightened, irritation flickering before she smothered it again. I wouldn't want this to affect the family atmosphere, she said sweetly. Especially since your husband and I will be working closely from now on. Working closely? I repeated, confused. On what? Oh, she said lightly. He didn't tell you? My heartbeat thudded painfully. Tell me what? Tell me what, Rena? I said, unable to hide the edge in my voice. She tilted her head, faux innocence dripping from every syllable. That he's considering partnering with me on the new business proposal. I presented it to him last night after you left the room. Partnering? With her. Behind my back. My breath caught, not because of the business itself, but because of what it meant. She wasn't just crossing boundaries. She was inserting herself into places she didn't belong. Places personal. Places private. Places dangerous. And then she added, with a soft, pointed smile, we'll be spending a lot more time together. I hope that's not uncomfortable for you. The air around us seemed to thicken. The room shrank. Every instinct inside me screamed that this was only the beginning. Only the first crack in a wall she intended to break down. I heard myself say quietly, you came here for more than an apology. Something flickered in her eyes, like I'd touched the truth. But she masked it with a graceful shrug. I just want harmony, she said. For everyone's sake. Especially Aisha. My hands curled into fists. Because the way she said my daughter's name, it wasn't concern. It was threat disguised as politeness. I'll speak to my husband, I said. But for now, I think it's best you leave. Her smile widened, not warm, but victorious. As you wish. She walked out with elegance, but the sound of the door closing behind her felt like the beginning of a storm. I stood there for several moments, breathing deeply, trying to settle the tremor in my hands. When I finally turned around, Aisha was standing at the entrance of the hallway. Amy, she whispered. What did she say? I opened my mouth to answer. But a sudden vibration from the table interrupted me. My husband's phone. He had left it behind. And the message glowing on the screen froze my breath. A message from her. Short. Blunt. Too familiar. Call me when you're alone. My world tilted. Because now, it wasn't just tension. It was betrayal taking its first breath. And everything inside me knew. I stared at the glowing message on my husband's phone, my hands shaking despite my efforts to study them. The words were simple, almost casual. Call me when you're alone. But the weight behind them felt like lead pressing down on my chest. I couldn't shake the sense that this was no ordinary message. It was a thread, and if I tugged at it, I might unravel everything. Aisha hovered behind me, eyes wide. "Amy, what is it?" Her voice was cautious, fearful. I swallowed hard, forcing calm into my voice. "It's nothing. Just a message. I'll handle it." But inside, my mind raced. The calm I had maintained through Rena's visit felt like a fragile veneer cracking under pressure. I knew that answering that message could change everything, expose secrets, shift alliances, maybe even reveal truths about my husband that I hadn't been ready to face. The morning sun struggled through the curtains, spilling pale light across the living room. Dust motes danced in the air, tiny witnesses to the turmoil building silently around us. I pressed the phone to my ear, listening to the dial tone, each second stretching painfully. "Hello." The voice on the other end was smooth, controlled, yet underneath it pulsed a sharp edge I couldn't ignore. "Yes, that's me," I said, carefully. A chuckle, low and measured, came from the other side. "I knew you'd call eventually."
Why?
"Why are you contacting me now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I thought you'd like to know the truth," the voice said. "Before decisions are made. Before anyone else can interfere." I froze. The words hit like a cold wind, truth. But whose truth? And at what cost? My mind darted to Aisha. Should I involve her? Should I shield her? Or would that put her in greater danger? "I don't understand," I whispered. "You will," the voice replied, then paused, letting the silence stretch. "But not here.
Come alone.
Tonight. The address, you'll receive it shortly."
Click.
The line went dead. I sat motionless, gripping the phone, my pulse echoing in my ears. The room seemed smaller now, the walls closing in with secrets and unspoken warnings. Every instinct screamed at me, "Be careful. Trust no one completely." Aisha approached, slowly, tentative. "Amy, what did they say?" I looked at her, the love and protectiveness in her eyes pulling at me. I had to shield her from the danger that lurked beyond our front door, but I also had to prepare. I couldn't let fear dictate the next move, not now, not ever. "Nothing yet," I said, masking the urgency. "But we need to stay vigilant. Things might get complicated." Complicated. That word suddenly felt too mild for the storm gathering outside, and even more inside me. I remembered the message Rena had left on the table before she departed, the carefully veiled threats in her politeness. The way she said Aisha's name like it was a weapon. I poured myself a cup of tea, but the warmth did nothing to soothe the cold knot in my stomach. My husband's words, his trust in me, his silent guidance through every challenge, echoed louder than ever. I realized then that he had prepared me in ways I hadn't understood. Subtle instructions, small lessons woven into our life, now forming a map I had to follow. The day passed in a blur of mundane actions, cooking, tidying, glancing at the clock, but my mind never stopped. Each tick of the hour hand reminded me that the evening would bring confrontation, questions, and perhaps revelations I wasn't ready to face. When night fell, the sky was a canvas of ink, pierced by a few distant stars. I donned my coat and gloves, each movement deliberate, practiced, and necessary. Aisha hugged me tightly. "Be careful, Amy," she whispered. "I will," I said, though the tremor in my voice betrayed the storm inside. The address arrived shortly after. A small, nondescript location at the edge of town, far enough that anonymity was guaranteed. My heart thudded violently as I drove there, each passing streetlight illuminating shadows that seemed to follow me, watch me, whisper warnings I couldn't fully hear. I parked discreetly, the engine ticking quietly in the cold night. Stepping out, the air was sharp, bracing, almost biting, as if nature itself knew the danger lurking ahead. My hands rested on the edge of the car door, steadying myself, and I remembered my husband's quiet advice over the years. Courage doesn't mean absence of fear. It means moving forward despite it. The building was dark except for a faint light in a window upstairs. My feet carried me forward, one step at a time, as my pulse synchronized with the slow, deliberate creak of the old wooden steps. I paused at the top, listening. Silence. Too perfect.
Too calm.
My chest tightened, mind racing with every possibility. A shadow moved inside the doorway. I squinted. The figure stepped forward. Familiar, yet not entirely. Bridget, a voice called softly. And there she was. Cassandra, my sister. The air shifted, heavy with unsaid words, tension, and the promise of truths long buried. The room smelled faintly of paper, polish, and secrecy, an environment perfectly suited to revelations and confrontations. I swallowed, my throat dry. Cassandra, what is this? Her lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. It's time you knew everything. And in that moment I realized the evening would not be simple. The revelations tonight could unravel everything I had believed about my family, my husband, and even myself. And then, as she reached for a folder on the table, my heart skipped a beat. The first page peeked out, and I caught sight of words that froze me instantly. Adam's hidden will. I didn't have the chance to breathe. Cassandra looked at me and said, quietly, deliberately, I hope you're ready for the truth. And in that instant I understood. Nothing would ever be the same again. The phone slipped from Evelyn's trembling hand, clattering against the marble countertop, and for a split second, the world seemed to stop. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure the neighbors could hear it. Across the kitchen, Lucas's birthday cake sat untouched, frosting glistening under the morning sunlight that streamed through the living room windows. She couldn't bring herself to look at it, not after Cassandra's words had cut through the air like a knife. I know the truth, Evelyn, Cassandra had said the night before, voice sharp with that familiar mixture of accusation and entitlement. Lucas is Adam's son, and you know it. You can't hide it from me. Evelyn had sat there, silent, feeling the cold seep into her bones as the implications sank in. Her mind raced through every memory with Adam, every promise, every quiet night of conversation, and still there was that seed of doubt Cassandra wanted to plant. But Evelyn knew the truth. She had to protect it. Now, in the quiet of her home, she let herself breathe, letting the memories of Adam's laughter and their shared life anchor her. Every detail mattered. The way he had always left a cup of tea next to her chair, the smell of his cologne on his jacket, the gentle hum of the radio he liked in the mornings. These were facts, proof of a life built on honesty and love. Evelyn walked to the study, where Adam's documents were meticulously arranged, each folder labeled with a date and a note in his precise handwriting. She pulled open the top drawer of the safe, revealing the original will, trust documents, and banking records that had been her quiet reassurance since his passing. Her fingers traced the edges of the papers as if she could draw strength from them. I will not let her manipulate me, she whispered to herself, her voice firm despite the quiver in her chest. I will protect Adam's legacy and Lucas. She spent hours that morning mapping out what Cassandra could do, anticipating every possible angle of attack. Evelyn knew her sister's history. Cassandra had always acted first and thought later, letting jealousy dictate her choices. This time, Evelyn would be ready. She copied important documents, secured her digital accounts, and even scheduled a meeting with a private investigator to verify what she already suspected. Cassandra's claims were baseless. By afternoon, the house felt different. The tension had thickened, like a storm cloud hovering just outside the windows. Evelyn stood by the living room window, watching the light shift across the floor, and for the first time since the birthday party, she allowed herself a small smile. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't a victim. Just then, the doorbell rang. Evelyn's hand froze in midair as she looked toward the front door.
Who could it be?
Was it Cassandra, bold and unafraid, ready to confront her in person? Or someone else entirely, drawn into this web of lies without warning? Her chest tightened, a mix of fear and anticipation swirling within her. She took a deep breath, smoothing her blouse, and walked slowly toward the door. Whoever it was, Evelyn knew one thing: she would not falter. She had Adam's proof, her own strength, and a determination hardened by betrayal. As she reached for the doorknob, the shadows outside shifted unexpectedly, and a figure stepped forward, hands raised in feigned innocence. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, heart thudding. The confrontation she had prepared for, the one she knew would come, was here. Evelyn's hand hovered over the doorknob, the cool metal pressing against her palm, and she could feel her pulse hammering in her temples. The figure outside didn't move, just stood there, shadowed by the afternoon sun, but she could see that familiar smirk that had always irked her, that same mix of confidence and entitlement that Cassandra carried like a badge. "Hello, Evelyn," Cassandra said, her voice deceptively calm, almost syrupy, as though nothing was wrong. "We need to talk." Evelyn's fingers tightened around the knob. "About what?" she asked, her voice steady but cold, every syllable measured. She didn't flinch, she couldn't. Cassandra's eyes flickered to the mailbox, then back to Evelyn. "About Lucas. About Adam. You can't just keep everything for me. I have rights too, you know." Evelyn's jaw clenched. She remembered every sleepless night after Adam's death, every tear she had shed quietly in the darkness. And now, here was Cassandra, trying to unravel all of it with a few words and a claim that was as false as it was cruel. But Evelyn had prepared. She had evidence, witnesses, and an unwavering belief in the truth. "Rights?" Evelyn echoed, her voice growing stronger. "Lucas is Adam's son. That's true. But your claims? They're lies, Cassandra. Every word of them." Cassandra's smirk faltered, just slightly, replaced by a flash of irritation. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Hiding everything behind paperwork. But what happens when the world knows? What happens when people start questioning you?" Evelyn stepped forward, each movement deliberate, radiating the calm that only preparation and certainty could give. "Then they'll see the truth. Adam's documents, the bank records, everything I have proves that Lucas is safe and that you've been manipulating the situation for your own gain. I won't let you take him, or his inheritance, from what he deserves." Cassandra's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, Evelyn thought she might storm off, but instead, Cassandra leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, venomous and cold. "You think this ends here? You think your little triumph will stop me?" Evelyn didn't flinch. She didn't back down. She had spent weeks building her strategy, gathering evidence, and fortifying herself emotionally for this exact moment. Every fear she had felt, the grief, the betrayal, the isolation, they all converged into a single, unbreakable resolve. "You can try, Cassandra," Evelyn said, her voice low but unwavering. "But you've underestimated me. And Adam would be horrified by your actions. You've crossed a line that cannot be undone." The tension between them was electric, almost tangible. The quiet of the neighborhood seemed to fade, leaving only the harsh rhythm of their words and the pounding of Evelyn's heart. And then Cassandra did something unexpected. She laughed, sharp and hollow, a sound meant to intimidate. Evelyn's stomach tightened. She knew Cassandra's next move would be manipulative, possibly legal, possibly emotional. But Evelyn had thought of that too. She had already contacted a lawyer, had documentation notarized, and had a private investigator confirm everything. Every lie Cassandra could throw at her had a counter, every threat met with proof. Cassandra's eyes darted toward the mailbox again, then back at Evelyn. "You'll regret this. You think you've won, but the world is full of surprises." Evelyn's lips curved into a small, confident smile. "The only surprise here, Cassandra, is that you underestimated me. And that will be your downfall." For the first time, Cassandra's mask of confidence faltered entirely. She realized Evelyn was no longer the grieving, isolated widow she thought she could intimidate. Evelyn had transformed grief into strength, betrayal into determination, and fear into strategy. Cassandra backed away, the tension snapping like a taut wire, and finally muttered, "This isn't over," before turning and walking down the street, shoulders stiff, pride wounded. Evelyn closed the door, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of the confrontation slowly lift from her shoulders. She walked back to the living room, where Lucas played quietly with his toys, oblivious to the storm that had just passed. Kneeling beside him, Evelyn brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "It's over for now, little one," she whispered. "But I'll always protect you. Always." And as she looked around the room, seeing Adam's picture on the mantel, the house that held so many memories, Evelyn felt a surge of calm determination. She had faced Cassandra, faced her own fears, and come out stronger. The battle wasn't just about inheritance or lies. It was about truth, resilience, and the courage to stand firm in the face of betrayal. For the first time since Adam's death, Evelyn felt a quiet victory, not just for herself, but for Lucas, for their life, and for the legacy of love and honesty that Adam had left behind. And though the road ahead might still hold challenges, she knew she would face them with unwavering strength. Evelyn stood by the window, the late afternoon sun casting a warm glow over the living room, and finally allowed herself to exhale. The tension that had gripped her for weeks, the fear, the anger, the uncertainty, was slowly ebbing, leaving a quiet clarity in its place. Cassandra's threats, the lies, the manipulations, they had all been met, faced, and dismantled. Evelyn had won, not through confrontation alone, but through preparation, patience, and unwavering truth. She turned to Lucas, who was stacking colorful blocks on the floor, completely absorbed in his little world. Evelyn smiled, feeling a swell of protective love. "You're safe, little one," she whispered, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "Nothing will ever change that." The doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected, making her flinch for a moment. But this time, it wasn't a threat. It was her lawyer, holding the finalized documents confirming her sole guardianship and control over Adam's estate. She took them with a sense of quiet triumph, her fingers brushing over the embossed seals and signatures. The paper was proof, not just of legal authority, but of resilience, foresight, and self-worth. Later, Evelyn sat down with a cup of tea, inhaling the faint aroma of chamomile as she reflected on the past weeks. The grief over Adam's sudden death had threatened to drown her, and Cassandra's betrayal had been a sharp, cruel reminder that family could wound as deeply as loss. Yet, in the midst of that pain, Evelyn had discovered something essential: her strength. She had realized that no one could dictate her life, her choices, or her protection of those she loved. She thought back to the moments of doubt, the sleepless nights, the fear that had threatened to paralyze her. And she remembered the turning point, when she decided to act, to gather evidence, to face Cassandra with clarity rather than anger, to protect Lucas and honor Adam's memory. That decision had changed everything. Her phone buzzed, a message from her best friend Marianne. "I've never been prouder of you. You handled everything with courage. Adam would be so proud too." Evelyn typed back a simple reply. "We're okay. We're safe. And we'll be stronger than ever." As she set the phone down, she allowed herself a quiet smile. The house, once a place of memories haunted by grief and tension, now felt like a sanctuary again. Every picture on the walls, every corner filled with laughter and love, reminded her of what truly mattered. Not wealth, not inheritance, not lies, but integrity, courage, and the unwavering bonds of truth. That evening, as Lucas drifted off to sleep, Evelyn found herself walking through the rooms, touching the edges of tables and chairs, remembering Adam's presence, the life they had built, and the love that still lingered in every corner. She knew Cassandra might still try, might still manipulate, but Evelyn was prepared, not just with documents or legal proof, but with the strength of someone who had faced betrayal and emerged unbroken. She paused by Adam's photograph on the mantel. The image captured his warm smile, the gentle eyes that had seen her through so much. Evelyn whispered softly, "I'll honor you, Adam. I'll protect our family. I'll live fully, even without you here. And I'll never let anyone take what we built." A feeling of liberation washed over her, the weight of fear lifting, replaced by a quiet, resolute power. Evelyn realized that her journey through grief, betrayal, and uncertainty had forged a new self, someone resilient, confident, and fearless. She had learned that true strength was not in avoiding pain, but in confronting it with clarity and compassion. And as the house settled into the calm of night, Evelyn looked out at the horizon, the stars just beginning to sparkle. A sense of peace and empowerment filled her chest. She knew the road ahead would have challenges. Life always did. But she also knew she had everything she needed to face them: her courage, her wisdom, and the unbreakable bond of love she shared with Lucas and the memory of Adam. For the first time since Adam's death, Evelyn felt free. Free from fear, free from doubt, and free to embrace life on her own terms. The betrayal had been a trial, but it had also been a revelation. She had discovered her worth, her power, and her capacity to protect the ones she loved. And in that quiet, luminous moment, Evelyn made a promise to herself: I will live boldly. I will love fiercely. I will never allow anyone to take my truth from me. The night air was still, the world calm and vast, and Evelyn finally allowed herself to believe in the future, a future of safety, of clarity, and of the unshakable strength that had been within her all along. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Voice of Jenna so you never miss the next chapter in our world of twists, lessons, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world to me, and trust me, the stories only get better from here.